Welcome to Higher Learning. I am your host, Oz Rashid. This is more than just a podcast. It's a front row seat to how elite leaders build the most iconic of teams. The kind of leaders who spot potential that others overlook, who build cultures people don't want to leave, who set the bar, then raise it. Work and how we work is evolving at a rapid pace like no time in history. Our guests will give you insights on how to stay out in front when it comes to all things talent, leadership, management, artificial intelligence, and developing the skills that actually matter. Whether you're a founder, hiring manager, or just obsessed with building teams the right way, this is your spot. If it's your first time here, welcome. Hit that subscribe button, drop a rating, tell a friend who gets it. To our longtime listeners, we appreciate you. Thanks for the continued support. Now, let's get into it. All right, listeners, my guest today has spent 30 years turning around hospitals that everyone else had written off. And for the last 6 years, he's been running one of the most interesting experiments in American healthcare. Paul Hiltz is president and CEO of Naples Comprehensive Health. And before Naples, he built his career across Ohio at Mercy Health, Mercy Medical Center in Canton, and the Springfield region, fixing systems that were losing money and losing their doctors and turning them into some of the best performing hospitals in the state. Since he took over at NCH in 2019, he's taken a $600 million community hospital system and built it into a $1 billion comprehensive health network. Their heart program alone went from 300 open heart procedures a year to over 1,500, now the number one heart program in Florida. And they just broke ground on a 200,000 square foot heart, vascular, and stroke institute. He's also a Forbes bestselling author, and this year, the Collier Community Foundation named him one of the 5 most influential nonprofit leaders in Southwest Florida. But ask anyone who works with him, and they'll tell you the real story. A CEO who still rounds the hospital on a night shift with his nurses because he believes if you don't actually like taking care of people, you can't work at NCH. Paul, how the heck are you?
I am well. Good to see you again.
You too, sir. I am so excited to jump in this. You have been part of an amazing transformation story, leading a lot of that from the front, but with the help of a great team. I want to dive right into it. I want to learn more about Naples Comprehensive Health, but I also want to learn a little bit more about your journey and your story. So we'll start here. As we mentioned earlier, CEO and president of Naples Comprehensive Health, but you've been working at hospitals and hospital networks since the mid-'80s. And I'm just interested, what first got you into healthcare? Was this a lifelong passion? Was it a family thing? Was it something you fell into? Help me understand your journey into healthcare.
Well, my journey into healthcare was a bit of a family thing. I can tell you that my 2 sisters are nurses. My brother is a doctor. So I come from an extended family of people who really love helping people and were helping professions. And I sort of fell in love with hospitals because you just used the word as team. And when I went into hospitals as a little kid, I noticed teams of people of different colors, different nationalities and backgrounds. And to me, that was exciting. I wanted to be a part of a team like that.
I love that. And that's not something you always hear in the healthcare space, but you see it when it works well, right? When you have physicians and nurses and administrators and leadership working together, that in turn leads to better patient care. And you can feel that a lot of times when you're in a hospital or in working in some sort of healthcare organization. So I love to hear that the teams are what drew you in. Now, listen, you didn't, move to Naples and move to this role. You were at another organization for almost 2 decades. You were in a completely different part of the country. I had to imagine there was something really compelling about NCH back in 2019 for you to leave somewhere you'd been so long. Tell us what that was. What drew you in?
Well, I'll tell you, there was 2 pieces to that. The call that I got from a search firm happened on a snowy day, and it was sunny down here in Naples, and it was warm, and that was number one. I said, wow, that could be a great way to spend winters. But seriously, what drew me to this, you just mentioned an experiment. It is a bit of an experiment because the national trends in healthcare are that independent hospitals are joining large national systems or being acquired by bigger systems. This organization and the board here really wanted to remain independent and locally governed. And to me, that was appealing. And so the experiment here is, can a locally driven independent hospital not only survive, but can it thrive in today's environment? And I believe we are proving that it can be done. Not easy, but if you have the right team, the right people, the right doctors, you can really provide excellent care.
There's no doubt about it. The growth we talked about earlier is so compelling. 300 open heart procedures to 1,500, the opening of the 200,000 square foot Heart, Vascular, and Stroke Institute. It seems like there's making a really big impact on that community. I know how important that is to you. You said something funny, like you got a call from the search firm on a snowy day. My firm, from between 2012 to 2018, we relocated over 300 people to South Florida.
Well,
And you'd be amazed how much we would target in the winter months, knowing to go to Toronto, Chicago, New York, and all those big Midwestern hubs, because we knew that on those days it was more likely that you'd take a peek what's going on down here in Florida, and it might just be a little bit more appealing. So I think it's funny that you brought that up. So I don't know enough people know about what a CEO president of a healthcare network like Naples does in an average day. I imagine it's very different, and it's got to be one of the more exciting parts of the job. But if you can, just bring us behind the curtain. Tell us a little bit about your role in particular and what it entails.
well, it's a really, I love the job I'm in. I guess my days are varied, but one of the things I really enjoy doing is interacting with doctors, nurses, and I enjoy interacting with the patients. So I try to round off few patients every day. And there's a line here, I've stolen it from somebody else, but I tell people who want to come to work here, if you're not taking care of a patient, then you better be taking care of someone who is taking care of a patient. So my main job is taking care of the people who are taking care of our patients. We try to make this an environment where doctors really feel appreciated, where nurses feel appreciated, and where everybody here feels that they can do their jobs to their very best of their ability and enjoy what they do. I want doctors and nurses to actually enjoy coming in here. Sounds funny, but we believe that if we can do that, it will really help us be a leading organization, because across the country, I'm sure you've read this, doctors in general are pretty burnt out and they feel underappreciated or unappreciated. And here we try to make doctors and nurses and all caregivers really feel like they're doing great work.
I think that's so important. I mean, we do so much work. I mean, healthcare is a big part of our business, but we work with across all different industries and organizations. And the best companies we work with, they create purpose for people in their work. They create an environment where people feel emboldened to do their best work. They help develop and challenge people in a way professionally that makes them excited to go to work every day. And so you're right. I mean, we see it a lot in healthcare. It can be particularly when I look back to COVID and I look at some of the different things that happened during that time. I mean, it can be a burned out, worn down thing, sometimes thankless. And I think creating an environment where people feel good and feel valued and feel like they're going to be able to do their best work, I think is a really smart talent strategy. Now, when you came in 2019, the company's gone through rapid growth since you joined. I'm just interested, before we look forward, was this preordained? Was this inevitable? Or did you come in and what was the lay of the land when you got there? And then how did you start to move this ball forward around kind of getting this on this trajectory for growth?
Well, when I joined, shortly after I joined, COVID hit. So I came in the fall of 2019. COVID came right in early 20. So we immediately hit the ground running in a sort of a crisis mode here in American healthcare. But the board here was very specific and very direct with me when I took the job. They told me that quality was job one, that they were not satisfied with being average, that they wanted to be at the top of the industry, and they were willing to support me in anything that I did to get us there. And then I began to recruit people that bought into that vision of excellence. And I told people that joined, if you are okay with average, you probably won't like it here, because we're attracting people who wanted to be at the top of their game. And one of the first doctors I recruited happened to be one of these superstar doctors by the name of Robert Cabedu. He came from the Cleveland Clinic and is now president of our Heart Institute. He was the first catalyst to really start this journey to excellence. And it's been a lot of fun, a lot more to do, but we've made a lot of progress so far.
So bringing in this talent is kind of what lays the foundation. But I'm super interested. What's next for NCH? What are we going to, as we open the news, as we read newspapers, as we hear about the organization, what are we going to be looking for in the coming months and years?
Well, a couple of things. And we've got the Heart Institute's going to be opening here about a year from now. We've got a $300 million heart hospital that'll open. We just opened an orthopedic specialty hospital in conjunction with the number one orthopedic hospital in the world, the Hospital for Special Surgery out of New York. The next thing you'll read about will be our cancer program here. We've recruited a medical director from the Mayo Clinic to lead the oncology division here. And then finally, where many hospitals in America are closing women and children's services because of the financial challenges, we are going to be expanding our services to women and children. We've partnered with the Nicholas Children's Hospital out of Miami. And thanks to some generous donors here, we'll be doing an expansion of women and children's services. And it's going to be a big, big deal here for Southwest Florida. We, believe it or not, a lot of people think of Naples as being a very old community. We deliver about 4,000 babies a year here at NCH.
Yeah, West Florida in general is growing. I mean, there's a beautiful Ritz-Carlton out there. I love the beaches out towards that Naples way. My family goes and we vacation there from South Florida all the time. It is a great community. And I love to hear about some of the more underserved areas that, healthcare and financials just they go together right now. And that value proposition, that business proposition impacts real people. And so thrilled to hear that you're doing things to kind of not just kind of keep that static, but grow and develop those areas where others are potentially underserved. And it all starts with talent. And that's what I love. And that's why we were talking, because it seems like you understand to make these things happen, I have to put great leadership in place with great vision and let them have autonomy and go execute. I love that. And that sounds like that's what a lot of the growth is centered around, which is something I totally get behind. All right. So now you get like all these great talented people from all these different places, and culture is something that you've talked about and said is very important to you. So I'm interested. I talk a lot about great business culture. I think it's a little bit harder to put a pin in what it means in a great hospital or a healthcare organization. So tell me what that culture look and feels like. And then what is your role in the CEO in terms of maintaining, but also like upgrading and like, cause here's the thing with culture. If it's not evolving, then it's going down. Right. And so you have to make sure that it's something that you're checking in on all the time and continuing to grow and iterate. Otherwise it can really stagnate. Do you see that too?
I think you said it right. You're either growing or you're dying. There is no status quo, especially in some place as vibrant as a healthcare organization. So the culture, we spend a lot of time with our selecting the right people who enjoy taking care of other people. That's number one. Secondly, when we get people in here at all levels, we try to develop board leaders. We developed a physician leadership academy that we do here. We've done this 4 years in a row, where we take 20 or so doctors and put them into a program that's 6 months long. And we help doctors learn how to be better leaders by understanding the business aspects of healthcare, but also understanding a little bit more about themselves as leaders. And just a quick example, our capstone project last year was to take the doctors up to Pensacola to the Blue Angels training camp to meet some of the Blue Angel pilots and to fly simulators and learn what great teamwork is, because we believe that healthcare is truly a team sport. So the leadership development, we believe, is a big, big piece of a healthy culture.
I love that. I love that analogy of looking out into external great teams, great areas. That it's funny you bring that up. One of the books I read, it's called The Talent Code, and it talks a lot about how immediate coaching and getting people to kind of become their best versions of themselves and creating a hotbed of talent. It goes back and it talks a lot about fighter pilots and how in World War II, right, they were looking at some of the numbers and different things that pilots were doing, and then ultimately they started doing immediate coaching, and they were seeing that in real time rather than waiting for them after the fact. And they noticed that the trend line started to really go up. And so I just think that there's so many great areas to pull from when it comes to learning and development, when it goes to talent development, when it looks at understanding things from a more holistic perspective and using those different avenues. Not every leader does that, right? It's like, oh, we're healthcare. We do healthcare differently. Healthcare is a unique beast. Yeah, but there's things that we can learn from other areas and other vantage points. And I think that's super sharp on your part.
So the Blue Angels encouraged our doctors because, as you know, pilots and then high performing teams like the Blue Angels do debriefs after every performance. So they encouraged the doctors, hey, start debriefing after big operations, after big procedures, criticize, reanalyze so that you get better with each operation, with each procedure. And this last year, we brought in a NASCAR team pit crew to help doctors figure out how best to work together in high stakes, high speed environments. So we try to always look outside of healthcare to see what we can learn. And what we find is is that the doctors and the clinicians here love that outside influence, and they take those learnings in, and we believe it's helped us take better care of the patients.
Yeah, listen, I love it. And just think about it. You go home, what did you do at work today? Well, I talked to the NASCAR pit crew, or I got to talk to the Blue Angels. Like putting that type of dynamism in your work environment, in your role, keeps people excited. It keeps people learning. And it sounds like they're getting a ton of value out of that. So I think that's awesome and great leadership and culture development on your part and the team's part. So we talked a little bit about donors early, making some of these things possible. And I know philanthropy is really, really important to you. And the backing of the local community has been a huge part of what you're building at Naples Comprehensive Health. Let's talk about the role that support plays. What does that mean and why it matters so much in what you and the team are trying to accomplish?
Well, one of the wonderful things about Florida, and especially Southwest Florida, is the generosity of this region. And as people have listened and learned about our vision and met the clinicians here, met the team, they have stepped up in a big way with philanthropy. So we raised last year just a little bit over $100 million in philanthropy, which is unbelievable. It's incredible. We could not do what we're doing here without the philanthropy, and it is really powering us. We were just named the #1 hospital in the state of Florida for heart attack mortality. We've got the lowest heart attack mortality rate of any hospital in the state. And we used much of the philanthropy dollars to get us better and better in terms of how we treat patients coming in with heart attacks. So that's one example of how donations save lives, and it's going to continue in many other service lines here at NCH.
Yeah, you want to feel the impact of your money? Try driving down a rate like that. You're literally saving lives and keeping families together and doing amazing, amazing things. That's an awesome story. I appreciate you sharing that. All right, let's take this from a little bit more of a personal perspective. I'm interested. Ohio, there's a lot of transplants down here, right? But you came from Ohio to West Florida 6 years ago for the role. I'm just interested, like, okay, you knew it was a little sunny down here and it'd be nice. But what surprised you about the community? And then how's the transition been for you and the family overall since you got to Naples?
Well, the move here has been fantastic because Southwest Florida is actually, it's a Midwestern city in Florida. It feels very much like Kentucky and Ohio, where I grew up and where I worked for many, many years. In fact, there are probably close to 300 families that have homes here, at least part-time, many of them full-time transplants. But many people go back and forth from Ohio to Naples seasonally. So to me, it felt like I was already home. And for my wife and I, this move has been fantastic because we're both outdoors people, golf, tennis. My wife is big into tennis. So this has been a great place, and the people here welcomed us with open arms. And NCH as an organization is a fantastic organization of been in business 70 years, but just tons of long-term committed employees, donors, and board members. So that's the kind of feeling I love in an organization, with that kind of commitment and passion to do the work we're doing.
Yeah, I don't know that anyone's ever described outside my window here as the Midwest. We probably got a little bit more of a New York feel down here in the Miami, Fort Lauderdale area. But I will say this, you talked about the pickleball, the golf, and the tennis. Everyone's so active out here, right? There's just so much going on when it comes to activity and doing things and being outside. And, I think sometimes in the Midwest, the weather prohibits that a little bit, right? And so it can be a little bit different. Have you seen that? Have you seen that kind of physical activity? And like, what does that mean in terms of healthcare and especially for, people getting up in age and senior citizens?
Well, you know what it's done for me? It's given me great optimism and hope as I age, as I look at aging people. I would say if you go to Ohio and you're 80 years old, you're a way different person than an 80-year-old here in Naples. 80-year-olds in Naples are on the golf course, on the pickleball court, on the tennis court. They're walking the beach. So here, you see a higher level of fitness. You don't see many people smoking here. You see a lot of activity, bike riding, and so forth. So I wish I could transport that feeling to the rest of the Midwest in the United States and let people know that just because you're over 65 doesn't mean that you have to stop playing tennis and golf and pickleball. So activity, I believe, and movement is the key to a nice, long, healthy, and happy older age.
Totally agree. Now, Paul, don't give anybody any ideas. I'm already getting my butt kicked by enough 75-year-olds down here playing pickleball and golf. So I don't need any more competition out here. I'm trying to work on my game. Okay. I love it. So listen, let's talk. We got to talk about talent because that's what pays the bills here at the Old Higher Learning. It's what I'm obsessed with. I know that it's something that is very important to you. I want to start here. I know you talked about it. I really love the line of, either you're in service of patients or you're in service of the people in service of patients at your organization. But when it comes to like hiring some of these really accomplished, high-powered physicians to bring into your organization to do some of these leadership roles, or just in general, people that you're bringing into your organization, do you have an overall philosophy of what matters to you in terms of the type of people that you want?
We look for people who in their background have a service history. We look for people that, and I tell younger people this all the time. I really like to hire people that have been in athletics. If you played on a high school team, a college team, if you've done anything that shows that you can work well in teams and you've been a successful and sports is a great, I think, great predictor of whether you can do that because in sports, and I think President Trump said this at the World Cup ceremony the other day, sports is a great analogy for life. You face setbacks, try to overcome those things, and ultimately that strong teamwork and that drive creates winners. And the same thing in healthcare. We talk to a lot of different physicians that are high performing people, but not all physicians are great team members. And so we believe that teamwork is a critical part of the culture here. And we look for that in people's backgrounds, whether it's a high school student that we're hiring part-time, a college student, a college graduate, or whoever we hire. We like people that can work in teams.
I love that. And some of the best people that we've hired in our company or some of the best people we've hired for our clients have been athletes that played some level of high level athletics. And I think military also this kind of aligns with in terms of discipline.
Yeah, I agree with you. The military piece is huge too.
For sure. Discipline, taking coaching, like you said, facing adversity and fighting through it, working together for the betterment of something bigger than yourself. And that's a great call out by you because there are a lot of physicians that I'm a doctor, I went to medical school, I did my residency, I work alone type of thing. And that can be successful, I guess, from a professional perspective, but that's not going to work for your environment or team-based environments where you got to really be working together hand in hand. And it's not necessarily a hierarchy either. It's about getting things done, taking care of patients, and providing better lives for them and their families.
Finding the right talent for your team doesn't have to be a struggle. Meet Aon Hire, the world's first hiring experience management platform designed to transform the way you hire. Powered by AI, Aon Hire takes the hassle out of every step in the process. From smart resume analysis to customized interview questions, it saves you time, money, and effort. Plus, with real-time insights from every interview, you can quickly identify top candidates, reduce turnover, and stay on budget. And forget about note-taking, Aon Hire takes care of that for you. Ready to revolutionize your hiring process? Visit aonhire.com and get started today.
The other thing we do a lot here, Oz, that I think has been, we've asked that our executive team here, and I do this myself, we do a lot of shadowing of doctors. So right now we're in a period where all the executives on my team are going to be shadowing a doctor over the next month, going on rounds, going into the operating, the cath lab, you name it, wherever. So we can get a better feel for what that life is like and what we need to do to support patient care in their areas. And I find that my teammates really love that. The doctors love that because they do feel a better sense of teamwork with the management team here. So, and lots of fun for us and productive for the doctors and the patients.
Okay, so I'm really interested in so you've been there 6 years, you've added to your executive team, you've been bringing in these highly accomplished, physicians to lead these different practices and areas. Let's talk about a memorable interview experience. Maybe a moment where you were talking to somebody that you weren't sure you were going to get or not, or maybe where they said something, you're like, aha, this is it. Or maybe, even if it was one that didn't work out, what's one that stands out to you or a story that you can tell us about that?
Well, one of the ones that we have a lady here who I hired a few years ago, and I was so impressed by just meeting her that I hired her even before we knew what job it would. She was a very accomplished college athlete. She'd spent time and actually grew up in France, just had this service mentality and an attitude that she just wanted to be helpful. And I just said, you need to be part of our team. Come join us. Then we'll figure out where you exactly fit. And she's turned out to be one of our top executives here at NCH. So sometimes you just see a person with the right attitude, the right brain power, and the right passion for this kind of work that you say, you have to be a part of what we're doing here.
Yeah, listen, the best leaders I know hire based on talent. They figure everything else out later. They know what works, and then they figure out how do we put this person in to be successful. And then ultimately, those end up a lot of times being the best hires, which sounds like exactly the same story and example you use there. Now, it's interesting because you talk about service a lot. I'm just interested. Do you have like a question, or do you have questions that you ask in your interviews to kind of determine if somebody has that mindset, or is it something you're more reading through in terms of how they answer more general questions?
A little bit of both. You know, we ask open-ended questions and see what comes out. And people that talk way too much about themselves, I sometimes it's a red flag. We like to talk about leading teams or being a teammate or accomplishments of a team. Things like that are things that attract me to a person. So we use a lot of conversation, and we like to have teammates that come in here interviewed by members of the team they'll be working with, and get a multidisciplinary look at that person to see if we all agree this person's likely to be successful here.
I love that. I got one for you because I look for, especially when I'm hiring for leaders, I want people of service. I want people that I a lot of times look for. You mentioned athletes. I like looking at people that worked in restaurants or hospitality. They understand how to go the extra mile. I know which brands put an emphasis and premium on that, and more importantly, train for that. I always am drawn to that. And so one of the questions I like to ask in my interviews is, tell me the most thoughtful gift you've ever gotten somebody that you cared about.
Wow.
And the answers that you'll get a lot of the time are, I remember hearing one story about a gentleman was, his girlfriend had a favorite meal. It was her birthday. And so he spent all morning going to this area to get the perfect fish and going to this area to get the perfect vegetables, and then making sure to like cook it and make it just in the oils exactly that she liked and have it ready and appointed with her favorite glass of wine and kind of put everything together. And I remember hearing that answer and feeling like, wow, that is really going above and beyond, right, to make somebody feel good. And it's not necessarily that you need to be the greatest gift giver in the world, but when it's somebody you really care about and you want to go above and beyond, you're going to put more thought into it. You're going to put, so it's not really an answer like I bought her a Ferrari or I bought him this or a house or whatever it may be. It's about the level of time and thought and effort you put into what somebody cares about. And I found that some of the people that are most of service give the best answers to that question.
Can I steal that one from you?
That's why I'm here, buddy. I'm here to give these out. You take that one and let me know. I hope you get good answers out of it. Okay.
Well, do it.
Love it. All right. So now let's talk about, you're the CEO. So it's maybe a little bit of a different interview with you than it might be with other people on the team. I know for me personally, sometimes I like to take people out to lunch. For very big hires, I've like either brought out their wives or their husbands, the spouses, whoever I can, to get to know them better as a family. But a lot of times it's just more conversational than it is like the drill run of these different things. Describe what an interview is like with you. What is the atmosphere you're trying to create? What are you trying to get out of that?
Yeah, the interviews that I do are very unstructured. I don't have lists of questions and I'm not writing the whole time. I'm really listening to the person to see what's coming out unsolicited or just sort of in a free conversation. How are they conversationally? What are their interests? How much, one of the things I'm always kind of curious, and I'm sure you are too, I always want to know what kind of homework have they done on this organization before they come here. I often ask people, how did you prepare for this visit? What did you do to get ready to visit with me, with my team, to see NCH? And you get some interesting answers there. People that have done a lot of homework and know a lot about the organization, of course, have a big leg up. I'm always amazed, and it happens infrequently, but sometimes you'll get a person coming in here who's done almost no homework, and they don't get anywhere in the interview process because it just shows a lack of preparation, which you can't have in healthcare. You have to have really prepared people to work in a high-tech place like this.
Particularly like when they get to you and they're at that point where they like hopefully like started to go, like you're not usually going to be the first call. So they've gone through the process. They should have learned a lot from the people they've talked to. And at this point, they're interested in the role. They should have shown that by doing research and being prepared and ready to go. What's funny about that? And I'm going to tell you this, you're going to watch, this is going to happen. Watch after this podcast comes out. I guarantee you at some point in the next 6 months after that, you're going to have an interview where somebody says, well, I heard you on this podcast talking about XYZ. You're going to see it because I hear that from our guests all the time. It's one of the frequent use cases. I had somebody tell me, I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there on me online, all good stuff, I hope. But I had somebody tell me they listened to 50 podcast episodes of myself before getting to the interview. Now, I had no way of telling if that was true or quantifying it. They were able to share stories across a few different ones that they heard or things that stood out. But I remember just sitting there like, hey, listen, I appreciate you, downloading and subscribing. Leave a comment, but you don't got to listen to 50 episodes. But that showed a level of preparation of somebody that definitely wanted the job, definitely wanted to be here. And I really appreciated that. And that was something that really stood out to me. Not that I'm recommending that to everybody that interviews here at MSH or AN. You don't got to listen to all 50, maybe 10. 10 might not be bad. All right, Paul, what about when it comes to kind of the not everything at NCH is going to be puppy dogs and lollipops. There's going to be some things that you want to give a realistic job preview. You want to tell people maybe the challenge they're walking into. How do you convey that? How do you balance like selling them and getting excited about wanting to join the organization, but also laying the land in terms of, this is what you'll be walking into and need to be prepared and ready for?
Well, a couple of things. We describe this environment here as being somewhat entrepreneurial, and in that we are growing so fast. I mean, we've doubled in size in 5 years. So we tell people, if you're a person that likes routine, lots of structure and lots of policy procedure and doing it in a certain way, you may not thrive in this environment, because we tend to attract and people tend to thrive here who are somewhat entrepreneurial and have sort of a growth mindset. Whatever they've walked into, they feel is never good enough. They want to improve it. They want to expand it. That's the mindset. And so in the questions we ask our candidates, we talk about, well, what have you done to grow something in roles that you've had before? And also, what happens when something doesn't go well? When you fail at something, how do you respond, or how have you responded to a situation where you didn't succeed the first time? And you get a lot of interesting answers there that tells you a lot about the personality of the person.
Love that. That's a really good one. I might steal that one. Good stuff. All right. Last hiring question. We all get it wrong. And so sometimes we what I find is the people that are best at hiring and do the best job of it and have the highest hit rate are the ones that have usually been doing it 10, 15, 20 years. And that's because they've made failures, they've made lessons, they've learned. If we look back throughout your hiring career, I'm sure you had some biases or things that you had to overcome. Is there a common theme on the ones that you missed that comes to mind?
The ones that I would say I'm trying to, move past this, but years ago, I was somewhat impressed sometimes by either an educational background that was from Ivy League or some impressive organization, or that they had been in a big time organization. And those two things sometimes aren't great predictors of success. And as I said, now I would much rather hire a person who's been successful managing a restaurant or leading a sports team, or been in a community college, but driven a community activity, something like that. And I don't get too bowled over by their college that they attended, or by one of their first or second jobs. That's sort of not too important to me anymore.
I totally understand what you're talking about. I went to the University of Arizona. Many people reference that as the Harvard of the West. So I have to sometimes let them know that, hey, not always that petty. I'm kidding. It's not University of Arizona. It's not the Harvard of the West. But I know what you mean. And you're right. I got to be honest with you. I've met a lot of really dumb people that went to Harvard and Yale. And some of the most industrious, smartest people I know went to a community college or graduated from FIU down the street or something like that. I mean, it's hard to really know, right? Just what that degree really says or tells you about a person. Because like any large group of people, you're going to have some good, you're going to have some bad, you're going to have a lot in between. So I think that's a great call out on you. And I think, maybe that opens the door, but what it should do is cause you to ask deeper questions and understand what about that actually makes them who they are today. Was it something that, has made them, entitled or something else? Or was it something that really drove them and they worked really hard to get there? Who knows? There's a lot of different things. The journey is in the story, not the paper. I like to tell people that all the time. And I think a resume is kind of an archaic artifact when it comes to telling that story. That's why the interview, although flawed, is still a really, really, really good way to get to understand who's the person you're bringing into your organization.
I would agree. Here in Southwest Florida, we're lucky. We've got Ave Maria University is not too far from here. And then FGCU, Florida Gulf Coast, are two that we tend to attract a lot of young people out of those two, not greatly known organizations, but these are great students, smart, hardworking people. So we're lucky to have a nice talent pool here.
Florida Gulf Coast University, dunk you. I remember from the tournament a few years ago. It was a good run. Yes. USF is down there too, I believe, right? Or not too far down the road. So let's ask about AI. I'm super interested to know, do you have like a personal use case that at home that you use AI for, or something that like maybe it's from a health perspective, or maybe it's for, I don't know, keeping organized, or I don't know, maybe it's even something you're doing in the organization. What's something that kind of stands out to you, might be exciting for our listeners to hear how you're using AI?
Well, we just had a board meeting this morning, and our chief information officer gave an update on how we're deploying AI. So today's a big day here because we're deploying something really interesting. It's an AI program where the doctor during the examination lays a phone out on the table. This program picks up a conversation, converts it, the clinical pieces of it, right into the medical record. And then filters out all the personal casual talk. This eliminates that thing that many patients just can't stand when their doctors are constantly typing during the exam. This eliminates that for our doctors. They'll now just walk in, look at the patient, examine the patient, and the medical record will be populated by that AI program. So to me, it aligns a little what you and I just talked about. How do you have doctors enjoy what they're doing? This program, this AI deployment is exactly that. And the patients benefit from it and the doctor.
I love that. And I'm fortunate enough to know some CIOs and CTOs in the hospital and healthcare space. And what I've heard as kind of a next phase of that is ambient listening that is actually built into the infrastructure of the hospital and the walls and things like that. Like you said, it's very important to not make sure that the sensitive information doesn't get out. You have to be able to be smart about that, but it also improves the patient experience and many times catches things that otherwise might not have been caught, which leads to better patient care, better outcomes for everybody. I am really excited about AI and what it's going to mean for healthcare, delivery of healthcare, cures, right? Solutions. Like there's just so much. I think that's one of the biggest opportunities we have. And one of the things I'm most excited about because, our country has a lot of things from a healthcare perspective that we know need to be fixed and made better. We have a lot of sick people out there. And I just think using this technology for the betterment of people's health and the betterment of people's lives, not just living longer, but living better lives, I think is hopefully going to be one of the great outcomes of this technology.
It's a fantastic time to be in healthcare. That's why I tell young people, if you want to get into a profession or an occupation where you can really enjoy it and grow for many, many years, you'll never be bored in healthcare. I like healthcare as much today as I did when I first started years and years ago.
I love that. Do you have a favorite book that you like to recommend to people, or maybe one that really resonated with you that you read that you'd recommend for our listeners?
I have a couple. I mean, I always recommend to new people, there's a book called The First 90 Days that I think is a fantastic book about starting a new job. What do you have to get done in that first 90 days? And I read a lot of leadership books. There's so many good ones out there, so many great podcasts on leadership. And the good news is it's way more accessible than it used to be. And I think listening to podcasts like yours are fantastic because whatever business you're in, it's a people business, and it's the ability to size up and work with people, which I think you're so good at and what you highlight.
I appreciate you saying that. I've been saying this literal line for 15 years. There's no such thing as a financial services company or a retail company or an automotive company. They're all people companies because at the end of the day, it's people that build the sales programs, that build the technology, that build the marketing, that are the people that you interact with to purchase the product or service or whatever it is. Everything is based on people. And thus, the space that I play in, the space that I live in, attracting and then eventually developing and retaining those people, there is no, in my opinion, bigger, remit for any company than doing that well. If you do that well, all that other stuff, all the financials and everything takes care of itself because it's of people for people at the end of the day.
I totally agree. And I always encourage young people that I talk to, if I go into schools, whether it's high schools or colleges, I tell people to work on their interpersonal skills because no matter what business they're in, there's going to be technology for sure, But the real winners in the new economy are going to be people who know how to interrelate with other human beings while they use technology.
So I got to tell you, I had a business discipline in college, but I also had a communications one. And I knew that AI was coming in the next 25 years and that I was going to be out in front with all these great interpersonal skills. They told me to do science and math, Paul, but I had it right the whole time. Who knew? All right, Paul. Might turn out that way. We'll see. All right, Paul, last question. What is some advice that you'd give 20-year-old Paul that you didn't know then, but that you know now?
I would give a 20-year-old Paul probably the advice to say, have less fear and try really challenging things. Over time, I developed that muscle of being a problem solver and a fixer. But when I was 20, I was afraid to jump into problem areas. And now I tell people that join our organization, hey, look for the trouble spots. Go there and try to fix those things. Become known as a problem solver, and your career will just take off.
Great advice. Very, very, very profound. I love that. I appreciate you sharing. You might also said, hey, go vacation down in Southwest Florida. It's pretty nice. You might want to check it out down there, right? Paul, I appreciate you coming on. There's so much cool stuff going on at Naples Comprehensive Health. I really appreciate you taking a little bit of time. I know how super busy you are. Hopefully people learned a lot. And like you said earlier about the podcast being a format, I think if anybody was listening to this, they got a lot on healthcare, about leadership, about culture and talent. So thanks so much for joining. I am so looking forward to staying in contact. And we're not that far down the road. So when I'm in your neck of the woods, I'll let you know. Certainly you find yourself down here in South Florida, you let me know. We can grab a bite, coffee, drink, something like that. Sound good?
Thank you very much. And congratulations, Oz, on what your success and everything that you're doing to deliver the content to people. I think it's fantastic. I'm honored to be invited on your show. So thank you.
I really appreciate it. We'll go back to a sports analogy. I just try to be a point guard. I want to facilitate these great guests, let them tell their stories, let them tell the things they're excited about. Naturally, it's going to turn into good content. So thanks again for coming on and sharing so much with us, Paul.
Thank you.
Talk to you later.